So welcome everybody. My name's Craig Foley. We're going to be talking about increasing the performance of your building. And we're just going to touch on today how the IRS through the Inflation Reduction Act is offering some generous incentives. And we're going to do a deep dive on that on the next Zoom meeting on August 16th. So I'll give you some information about that where we do a deep dive on the incentives. So today, this is a combination of the Cape Ann Climate Coalition, which Susan and Lisa work for, and Sustainable Real Estate Consulting Services, which Brianna and I work for. But we've been funded by the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center to really help property owners that have income producing property, so multifamily property owners, to increase the performance of their buildings. We're going to talk about the process of doing that over the course of this evening. And you're going to see Lisa Smith's contact information pop up a whole bunch of times. So I would just get this email down right now, lisajsmith3000@gmail.com. She's really the key player here. You know, I get to do these lovely presentations and have fun doing it, but Lisa does all the hard work. She's actually engaged with working with all of the property owners in and around Cape Ann, Gloucester in particular, to increase the performance of their buildings. And I will say, working now with Lisa and Susan over the course of the last, 5 or 6 months, I am blown away what a valuable asset that you have on the Cape. I live in Melrose. I'm here in my home in Melrose, which is a great little community. And we've got a great sustainability manager here in our town. But you guys have just some amazing, amazing assets on Cape Ann. And Cape Ann Climate Coalition is just a leader in this space. So you're going to see Lisa's email pop up a lot of times. If you're interested in any of the work that we're talking about today, you really want to reach out to Lisa. She's the key player here. She will work with you because these programs are, they're fairly complicated. And sometimes they almost sound a little bit too good to be true, right? And I think a lot of people think, it's a scam, If you're worried about that, you definitely want to reach out to Lisa. She knows the players here. We may not have all the answers, but we know where to get the answers and to connect you to the right place. So you've got just, I think, an unbelievable resource in the Cape Ann Climate Coalition. I've become their biggest fan in terms of advancing this work, which is so darn important. So this is me. I am a realtor, and I work for Lear Realty Partners, which is the largest independent realty company in the Northeast. I also serve as their chief sustainability officer. I run a team called the Rethink 39 group, and the 39 that we're rethinking is the 39% of U.S. energy consumption attributed to the built environment. I've also had just unbelievable opportunities to work with our national trade organization, the largest trade organization in the United States, the National Association of Realtors, on this intersection of real estate and sustainability. And, I've had opportunities to work with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government-sponsored entities, the GSEs, that really are the backbone of the mortgage industry on the topics that we're going to be dealing with over the course of this evening. Everybody in the real estate industry at the 50,000 foot level is looking at these opportunities for homes that perform better in very, very serious ways. For instance, both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have recognized independently in their data, and you can imagine the data resources that they have access to, that homes that have high performance features default less than homes that aren't energy efficient or don't have renewable energy assets on site. They default less. And, they're big companies. And when they say something defaults less, even if it's by a minimal amount, their investors get really excited about this. So these conversations are happening at the highest levels of the real estate trade organization. And we're going to just try to make stuff, real and try to simplify this stuff in terms of how to make your building a higher performing building. Here's one kind of important concept, right? I think a lot of us hope that, if the utilities get this all correct, and our utilities in Massachusetts, National Grid and Eversource, are leaders in the utility industry. We really need to be very proud of our utility hopes. I know prices spike and, it creates a lot of upheaval in the marketplace. And that's hard for people. There's no question about it. But both Eversource and National Grid are real leaders in trying to kind of rethink what their value proposition is as we transition to a clean energy economy. So, you see all those examples of power plants, some of them fossil fuel power plants, which emit greenhouse gases. And we're seeing some of the implications, the early implications of those greenhouse gas emissions over the course of the summer here with extreme weather events, whether it's extreme rainfall, like we saw in Vermont and New York, or extreme heat, like we're seeing in Phoenix, Texas, and Florida. We're seeing the impacts of this stuff all over the industry. I know 6 insurance companies that have gone out of business in Florida, and then recently farmers just pulled out of the Florida marketplace, as well as State Farm and farmers in California. So as soon as those homeowners' policies expire, they're not extending them anymore. They've got to pick, they've got to find new insurance companies. So this stuff is impacting the industry in a very powerful way. And I feel very lucky to have been part of that process, to engage NAR and our incredible advocacy team that we have in DC, our policymakers down there, in trying to figure out solutions, market-driven solutions that we can help with this. So there's that whole kind of right side of the grid, right? Oh my God, if the utilities got this right, everything would be fine. And of course, that is true. And there's real movement, particularly here in Massachusetts, to get this right. But, when I look at the climate problem and the greenhouse gas emission problems, we're just not going to get there by waiting for the utilities or waiting for, fusion energy, which I've seen all my life now, and I'm 60. This thing of fusion energy is going to change the industry. But, hopefully it does. Hopefully it arrives. Hopefully green hydrogen, arrives in time, right? But I don't think we can wait for all of that to happen. We have to have an all-in solution. And part of the solution, and I know realtors get surprised about this when I talk about this with them, but we have so much opportunity to control things on our side of the utility meter, the demand side of the utility meter. So if you look at the left-hand part of the chart, there's some homes with some solar panels on the rooftop, like Susan's, that are producing energy that she can use in her home. The businesses that we work in, the electric vehicles, we do have opportunities on our side of the meter to lower our utility costs. And, I would even say, it's worth thinking about this as being part of a good neighbor, or being a good community member, whether you're in Gloucester or Melrose or wherever you are. Part of what we can do to contribute to a solution for this rapidly expanding climate emergency that we're in is to lower demand on our side of the utility meter. And I think a lot of people are surprised about how much we can actually do and some of the funding that's available. you know? So here's an example, you know, my home's an 1895 Victorian, and my wife and I did a complete gut rehab of our home, and we're lucky, you know. My wife's had a successful career. I've had a successful career. We own 2 homes, so we could hole up in our home in Jaffrey, New Hampshire for 10 months while the builder was in here doing a complete retrofit of our home and filling it with spray foam insulation and decarbonizing the home, moving away from natural gas and switching to heat pumps that do our heating and cooling work, right? Not everybody has that ability to do that. I get it. But look at the savings up here, the annual savings from the work that we've done on our house, over $3,700 annually. Now, as a real estate agent, right, that's an important number. And as a real estate appraiser that's trained in valuing sustainable buildings, and believe it or not, we have a dozen of those appraisers in the state of Massachusetts that have gone through a very rigorous course set called the Valuation of Sustainable Buildings. And appraisers, when they look at a number like $3,700 annual cost savings, that's verified by a third party. This was a HERS rater, advanced building analysis. We can use a net present value calculation on the improvements on the home 30 years out through a 30-year mortgage. And we can add contributory value in the appraisal for those cost savings, which would be about $44,000 with interest rates the way they are right now. So this is real in the real estate industry. You know, unfortunately, not a lot of realtors are trained to understand the value proposition here. We're working on that every day in Massachusetts and nationally through the NAR Green designation. And we need more appraisers. But the reality is, if you hire a green designated agent, they know this process and they can protect you through the sale. So this adds real value to homes or buildings, your income producing properties that is very tangible in the real estate industry. So I apologize. This is kind of a cheap joke, the 50 Shades of Green. You know, it's a cheap joke off the great movie that we all remember. But I think it is kind of an important concept here, right? You know, you may have already started down some shade of green. And I could literally go through and list 50 shades of green. You know, my home is probably in the low 30 shades of green, right, with the work that we did. The 50th shade of green might be a passive house certified home that's producing more energy than it's using on an annual basis, that it's energy positive, right? It's beyond a HERS score of 0, right? But even if you're, you know, going around and changing your old incandescent light bulbs to LEDs, that's a shade of green. If you've had an energy assessment done on your home and you've done some air sealing and insulation work, good for you. That's fantastic. That's exactly what we want to have happen. So it doesn't have to be an all-in thing, right? We can tackle this one step at a time. That's a really important concept. And anything that you can do to tackle this one step at a time, you know, I give you a big applause for. And it, you know, lowers the operating costs of your building, lowers the greenhouse gas emissions that are attributed to the homes that we live in, the buildings that we work in, and the income producing properties that we own, makes the home more healthy to live in, more comfortable to live in. There's a lot of different assets here with high performance homes. You know, I live on 957 Main Street, Melrose, and you know, my office is in the turret of our building, and I'm looking out on Main Street right now, and I don't even hear the cars going by. Now, in the old house that we had that wasn't as well insulated, it was fairly loud here. And that's just another different asset for better insulations. It makes the home more comfortable and quiet and peaceful to be in. So these are all different shades of green. You know, we're going to try to cover some of these as we work our way through this presentation. And I'm going to give you just 3 simple key concepts to think about as you start to increase the performance of the buildings that you live or the buildings that you rent to tenants. Number 1, reduce before you produce. So what does that mean? Invest in energy efficiency first. It's the lowest, it's got the highest rate of return, the lowest investment when you do air sealing and insulation work. And I'm going to just hint at some of the incentives that are out there for the utilities that the utilities are providing for you, and Mass Save is providing for you to be able to make these relatively simple investments in your home. But I think a lot of people think, well, solar panels, they're sexy, they're going to lower my utility costs. That's really great. That's all true, of course. But I would rather see you invest in energy efficiency measures first, right? So for instance, if you have incandescent light bulbs, they use 90% more energy than the new LED light bulbs, the lighting emitting diodes. So if you're kind of picking a solar PV system and you've got all these old light bulbs and you haven't invested in energy efficiency and you invest in solar PV first, you may be getting a set of panels that is actually too big and overproducing. You're paying too much for that extra electricity. So reduce before you produce. Invest in energy efficiency first. That's key concept number one. Number two, record your improvements. And we're going to do a deeper dive on this with a tool. But again, when we get to this section, you're going to see Lisa Smith's email pop up again, because the cool thing that we're doing with the Cape Ann Climate Coalition is creating a database of all the income producing properties in Gloucester, and there's a ton of them. And we can help you record your improvements as well, right? And this becomes important when you want to take advantage of some of the investment tax credits that have been advanced through the Inflation Reduction Act. You're going to need to get this information to your tax accountant. It becomes important, critically important, I think, at the time of sale to pass these improvements along to your realtor so they can pass it along to the appraiser, and we can see these recognized in the appraised value of the property. It's really important to record these improvements as you go along. And then start to think forward about planning for the end of your appliance's life, right? And again, I'm going to just highlight Lisa Smith here. This is a really important concept, right? That you have an opportunity, if you start to think forward, rather than waiting for your water heater to go out. And you all know this, it does this, right? It's gonna start leaking in your basement on December 24th when you've got a whole group of guests in your home. That's when your water tank's gonna go. And of course, good luck finding a plumber on December 24th and 25th to be able to handle that. And it's pretty obvious. We know when these systems are at the end of their useful life. There's a lot of visual signs for that. So start to think forward about that. Don't wait for it to be an emergency, and anticipate the end of life of these appliances, because there are so many great new options out there, new tech that's available out there. And your plumber, your HVAC installer will be, will think you're a hero if you're thinking forward about this stuff, so they can actually do the right thing and use some of these great new technical options like air source heat pumps, for instance, which is actually absolutely transformational in the HVAC world right now. Replacing those old natural gas or oil-fired heating systems and replacing it with a heat pump system that not only produces heat in the winter, but also produces AC in the summer. I mean, I've got 4 mini splits in my home right now. We love them. This home has never been so comfortable in temperatures like this. We used to have those old, window units outside of this beautiful 1895 Victorian. I couldn't stand seeing those window units when I drive by the house on Main Street. And now we've got just a tremendously comfortable house here because we were thinking forward about our renovation and what we wanted to do. And I'll give you some more information of that as we go along here. So let's do a deeper dive on reduce before you produce, right? And this is like some of the low-hanging fruit right here, right? I can't tell you as a realtor how many homes that I walk into. I don't know, I'd say it's 40 or 50% that when I walk up into the attic, there's no insulation that's been blown in, right? That's low-hanging fruit. You get a Mass Save home energy assessment. They come, realize that you need some insulation up in the attic, and guess what? We've got this great incentive program through Mass Save. If that would cost you $2,500 to put in that insulation, the state pays for $2,000 of that. You've got $500 out of pocket. And why are the utilities in Mass Save even investing in this stuff? Because they know that it lowers demand on the grid, right? It helps all of us as good community members. And obviously, whoever's living in this house, whether it's your tenant or yourself, it increases the comfort of the house exponentially, and obviously lowers the heating cost during the winter and the cooling cost during the summer. So low-hanging fruit, reduce before you produce. Here's another great example of some of the things that you can even do it yourself, you know, gaps along baseboard, insulate around the electrical outlets and switch plates, the fireplace glue, get that taken, the cellar door and attic hatch, insulate that, drafts through mail slots, pet doors, exhaust fan, you know, caulking and weather stripping, vapor barrier, attic vents, all of this stuff that you see here can really be solved with a caulk gun on some level. And all of this fits into one category, which is air sealing, right? This is by far the simplest solution that you can do to your house and the absolute low-hanging fruit. Every fall, I go around both of our houses that we live in with a caulk gun and look at all the windows, all the doors, all the baseboards, all the molding on the exterior walls, and I just make sure that there are no gaps there. That air leakage, believe it or not, can produce a lot of paying for your utility costs. And it's such a simple thing to do. But, you know, you don't have to do it yourself if you don't want to. This is one of the great things that we have. We have in Massachusetts, the Mass Save program, one of the programs that have quote unquote, no cost home energy assessments. So it's a very unusual state. I don't know of any other state, and I teach the green designation throughout the country, that offers no cost. You know, the utilities don't like to use the word free because in fact, all of us pay for it with every utility bill in this small little cost called the system's benefit charge. So we're all paying into Mass Save. Take advantage of it. And if you have a Mass Save energy assessor come by your property, this is one of the things that they're going to be looking at is air sealing and insulation opportunities. This is really the low-hanging fruit. Reduce before you produce. Invest in the energy efficiency measures before you decide to go down, you know, renewable energies. And look, right there, contact Lisa Smith, Lisa J. Smith, 3000 at gmail.com. She will actually help you with this process because some of it can be pretty confusing. You know, some of you have property, income producing properties in environmental justice neighborhoods in Gloucester, and that requires a separate process than those of you that are in market rate neighborhoods in Gloucester with income producing properties. So before you start to go down this rabbit hole on your own, you have a phenomenal resource with the Cape Ann Climate Coalition. Contact Lisa. You know, she can help you record this stuff as well. We're going to talk about recording all of this stuff as well. But she can get you going down the right pathway. She will work with you to make sure you move down the right path. So here's an example. This is actually my primary bedroom, which I'm in right now. Back in, I think this was last March, we had the home insulated with closed cell spray foam, which is an advanced insulation, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But what you're seeing an example of is our HERS rater doing a blower door test. So what's a blower door test? They actually in March pressurized the indoor environment to this number called 50 Pascal. And this guy's running around, that red thing that he's testing all of the insulation with is a smoke wand. So because the interior environment's pressurized with this blower door test, he can walk around and see where the insulator has missed opportunities. Now, look, this is a tough building envelope. This is an 1895 Victorian. You can see that that's an example of a hip roof right there. It's inevitable that even the best insulators are going to miss opportunities, right? But we found probably 10 or 12 of these opportunities that would have cost me 25 to 50 bucks a year in utility costs. We highlighted where those were. The insulator came back in and finished off the job, right? So we can test the performance of these buildings as well. And again, you may not be going down this level of shades of green, but I just want to let you know that there are these kinds of opportunities that are out there, right? And one of the key, concepts here to think about in this reduce before you produce idea is, oh my God, the insulation industry over the last decade has just expanded in incredible ways. So you don't have to just settle for, that pink fiberglass insulation that everybody used back in the 70s and 80s. There's all kinds of insulation opportunities. This, by the way, I've got to give efficiency names. So Maine has a program like the Mass Save program called Efficiency Maine, and this is from their website. And one of the key concepts that I just want you to understand is this R value per inch. R value is the resistance for transference of energy, of heat or cool, right, through an environment. So the more R value per inch that you can get with some of these insulation opportunities, the better. I chose closed cell spray foam. Now that probably cost me $7,000 more than if I had done a traditional insulation package, but I wanted a very tight building envelope for my home. And we're going to talk about some of the incredible cost savings that I experienced, which far outweighed the extra things that I paid for to make this building perform better. And I can too, Susan, Lisa, Brianna, we can share this deck with everybody as a follow-up as well, so people have access to some of these tools as they start to think about this stuff. But and as I said, you have a home energy assessment through the Mass Save program, and Mass Save will subsidize $2,000 of a $2,500 insulation package, like you saw in that initial frame. That up in the attic insulation usually costs about $2,500. $2,000 will be contributed by the state for your building improvement. Just another thing about Cape Ann Climate Coalition, right? They do so many great things. And this is just a nice little chart that they have on their website. I don't know, Susan, Lisa, Brianna, if you have this page, feel free to throw it into the chat. But there's all kinds of relatively very simple things that can be done, and they're all kind of stackable. You can use all of these. This is the kind of, some of the easiest shades of green that are out there. The Gloucester Community Electricity Aggregation Program, an incredible program that is lowering utility costs. This is like a basic one that you got to make sure your tenants understand so that they can lower their utility costs. Great opportunities there. National Grid's R2 discount. So if you are in an environmental justice area, or you have tenants that are on the low to moderate income scale, by getting an R2 meter, you can automatically save 30% on your electricity. What a hero you'll be by introducing your tenants to this idea, right? I mean, there's all kinds of simple things that you can do to lower these utility costs. Again, Cape Ann Climate Coalition, such a great resource for the community of Gloucester. And look, There's Lisa J. Smith, 3000 again, at gmail.com. She can help you with this whole process. Now we're going into record your improvements, right? And I'm going to do a deep dive here on a tool that I used when I was recording the improvements on my home. But remember that Cape Ann Climate Coalition has developed a database so that we can help record and track your improvements. This is another way that Lisa can be an asset for you and your building, right? For all the reasons that I've already talked about, whether it's taking advantage of the tax incentives that are out there when you're going to sell, or, just everything that you need to do to record, your building improvements as you go. We all know that this is a very, very smart thing to do. All right, so I'm going to take you through an app. You can go to this on your computer if you want. It's free to use. It's powered by this company called Pearl Certification, which I'll do a little bit more information on a little bit. But it's www.greendoor.app. You can go to that, or right now it's free to use. I'm going to take you to it so you can see what I've done with Green Door on my property to record my improvements. So you can certainly do this on your own, but also you can reach out to Lisa and she can either help you with this or make sure it's recorded on the database so we have a good, solid, clear sense of everything that you've done. And this is really focused on improving the energy performance of your home, okay? So there's a little dashboard here that just shows you, there's a picture of my home right there, kind of the certification level that I'm at right now. And interestingly enough, my company, Lear Realty Partners, we've sold enough of these Pearl certified homes that Pearl hired a professional appraiser from North Carolina, outside of our state, to do a rigorous appraisal analysis on the homes that we have sold with Pearl certification. And we found that there was an increase in value over like-kind homes, comparative homes, of a 4.5% value increase for Pearl certified homes. So, increasing the value of your home, obviously a critical element of this as well. So just some great resources here. I'm going to go to My Home's Assets. So you can see on that left-hand side, I click this thing, My Home's Assets. And this gives you a good example of how to use this tool and how I used it specifically, right? And again, I'm thinking about when I go to sell, I want things recorded, particularly the invisible stuff. So insulation, as soon as we buttoned up the walls and painted them, all the insulation stuff has disappeared, right? Will a home inspector believe that was closed cell spray foam that we used? Well, guess what? They don't have to believe it because now we have the visual evidence of it. And you can see up here on the top right, Pearl does some really interesting things. And again, this is part of the marketing of the home, these properties when you go to sell. For instance, our attic roof insulation, according to Pearl's data, is in the top 5% of Massachusetts homes. I can honestly say to you, as a listing agent, when I'm listing an existing home with high performance features, I use this tool, and I'm going to show you the exact tool that I use to follow up with people that have come through open houses. And I know for sure that this has moved the minds of some buyers as they start to think about, do I want to put an offer on home A or home B? You follow up with this kind of stuff, top 5% of Massachusetts home, attic insulation, 29%. For wall insulation, floor insulation, top 3%, right? There's some really interesting marketing tools that make this invisible stuff visible for buyers, which is so important to make the invisible visible. But you can see here just an example of what I did, right? My office is in this turret, this picture on the right, which I look up, 12 feet above my head, and you can see it's all filled with closed cell spray foam, right? R value of R50 at the top of the building envelope, a pretty darn good building envelope for a home this old, right? So that's one example. of homes assets. You can see that in the wall insulation, I took pictures before the walls got buttoned up, so I can verify for a home inspector or the person buying our home that we actually did this fairly extensive work on our home. Puts the R value in there, you know, really good quality information that you want. Rim joist insulation, you know, so important. And this was something that Mass Save would do automatically as part of their home energy assessment. This is one of the critical points in terms of insulating a property, believe it or not, that can really make a difference to your home performance. So where the joist meets in our case, the stone foundation, that's a central area for insulation to improve the performance of a building. So again, we have the ability to look at all of these assets, you know, windows and skylights, for instance. We ended up using Anderson 400 series, which has a very good U factor. It's Energy Star rated, and there's the spec sheet right there, right? If I click on that, you'll see the spec sheet for the Anderson 400 series windows. Again, great asset when you go to sell. And the cool thing about this too is when my wife and I decide to sell this home in Melrose, I can transfer all of this information to the new home buyer as well. So it's valuable for them as they work their way through the process as well. Same thing with heating and cooling, right? Like I said, we went from natural gas, which we had, and we had no AC except for window units. And obviously 1895 Victorian, we didn't have any ductwork to be able to put a new AC system in. So instead of investing in a new natural gas system, investing in a new AC system, two separate systems, investing in ductwork, which would have cost me about $45,000, I invested in this new technology, air source heat pumps, 4 mini splits in this house. $25,000 was what the estimate was. Actually came in at $24,000, and I'll show you a little bit later on a frame that I have that I got a $10,000 incentive from Mass Save. So just, you know, I think a lot of times we think this greening a home up is going to cost us so much. My wife and I found it was terribly cost effective. And you can see there's a picture of the mini splits up there, the spec sheets in there, the certification of the product ratings, you know, a lot of really good information in there to record what you're doing on your home or your investment property. In my case, obviously, it's a home. I'm going to jump to, well, let's take a look at base loads. There's a whole bunch of stuff, again, that you can record here. Your water heater, for instance, for me, that's a heat pump water heater, a new technology that actually steals the heat in my basement and dehumidifies my basement at the same time to produce a super energy efficient water heater. So for instance, this energy guide here on the right shows people that are looking at a property, how much it would cost you to heat a water heater. And the range goes from, I think, $195 a year to like $350 a year for most water heaters. And you can see mine's off the chart. It only costs $155 a year for us to use this new technology for our expenses for heating the hot water. So again, these new technologies are all over the place. And this is a great example. I mean, how many water heaters, like I said, go on Christmas Eve, and the plumber's just going to come in an emergency situation, replace it with the first thing that they have, and you've missed an opportunity to take advantage of all of this great new technology that's out there. And of course, all of the spec sheets are here, so I've got that all recorded as well. It can be passed along to the new home buyer. Refrigerators, dishwashers, if they're Energy Star rated, all of that stuff can be in here. cooking appliance. So we did switch to an induction cooktop as well. So our home is fully decarbonized. We moved away from natural gas to an induction cooktop, this new technology for cooking. Many, many professional chefs are loving induction. It's very safe. It doesn't give off any methane. And my wife and I, have to get a little bit used to it because it runs hot. But my wife and I have definitely gotten used to it, and we wouldn't go back to natural gas at this point. And again, spec sheets are here, year it was manufactured, model numbers, all of that important information is now recorded, and we can pass it along, right? And then I'll just hit this last little piece so you can see this as well. Home management. Should be here. Good information in there about the things that you can do to make the home perform better. Third-party certifications over here. You'll see this is an example of the HERS rating. I already mentioned this to you. We came in at 59, which is not bad. It's a pretty good house for an 1895 Victorian. So we're happy about that. And again, quantifiable, $3,700 of cost savings for my wife and I annually. So we can quantify that, and appraisers that have gone through the valuation of sustainable buildings will add contributory value on top of the comps for the work that we've done in our home. I love this platform. It's free. It's easy to use. I record all of my information in here so that I have a detailed sense of this retrofit that we did on our house. And I'm just going to show you a couple other things that it gives you as well to just verify some of this stuff. This is for when you go to sell. And you've got a bunch of really important tools here to make the invisible visible. These are home tour cards. So it puts the homes in the top 1% of electric heated homes. Heat pump water heater, top 1% of Massachusetts homes. So I could take this to the water heater, or I could put it up here in the bedroom that's going to be the last bedroom, the last place that people are going to tour. Maybe I could expand these. I put them on foam pieces and put them on little, things that artists use, those little stands. And inevitably, I have people come back downstairs and say, "Hey, what's going on with this attic, top 5% of Massachusetts homes? What does that mean?" Right? So it's a very valuable tool for us as realtors to be able to have these assets that are available out there. Also in the document section, there's a lot of information in here, but there's the home highlight. So that's something that I might send out to a buyer after an open house. There's a letter here to lenders saying that we're going to demand a qualified appraiser to appraise this building. We can't pick a specific appraiser anymore, but we can demand a qualified appraiser. Like I said, we've got a dozen of these appraisers that have gone through a really rigorous course set to understand the value proposition for these homes that have high performance features. So there's just a ton of great stuff with this product called Green Door. For recording everything that you've done, making the invisible visible, and being able to use that as assets when you go to sell. All right, let's go back to the deck. So that's Green Door. Great little tool to use. But again, remember, you can also go to Lisa Smith, because we have developed a really cool database that can record all of the work that you've done on your home as well. So you have a couple different ways that you can do this recording your improvements. Number 3, plan for the appliance end of life. I mean, we don't have to be rocket scientists here to see that this is a problem, and this water heater is about to go, right? So, and you may not have a plumber that has access to these high performance new technologies, these heat pump hot water heaters that can save you a lot of money over time. There's a great incentive for mass save. If you're waiting for the last second for that thing to leak, you're going to get stuck with the same old stuff that you'll always get stuck with. And if you get stuck with that stuff, right? Look, with your water heater, it's going to be 10 years from now before you have the opportunity to make an improvement again. For your air conditioning, it's going to be 15 to 20 years. For your natural gas boiler, 15 to 20 years, right? And we need these solutions in homes now, not 15 or 20 years from now. We have to get control of this stuff just to be a good neighbor, to be a good community member, and to lower your operating costs, to take advantage of the great technology, this revolution that's happened in the HVAC industry. You need to plan ahead for this stuff and not wait for the appliances to be in an emergency situation. And again, another reason to contact Lisa, just to make sure, because she's, we're all trying to figure out the best ways to do this. Like I said, we may not have all the answers immediately, but if you give us enough time, Lisa has the contacts, Susan has the contacts to be able to figure out a way to help you with all of these solutions. Cape Ann Climate Coalition, as I'm going to show you in a little bit, just has some great volunteers that will help you with this work as well. And here's why this is important too, just in terms of your operating costs. This is Rewiring America, great company, great nonprofit. And they're doing an analysis here of operating costs of different types of heating systems, right? The electric heat pump technology, the mini splits that I've been talking about, right? The lowest operating cost nationwide versus even natural gas, propane, gas, home heating fuel, electric resistance. There are just great opportunities here if you plan ahead just a little bit to lower your operating costs on your home. Here's just a picture of a mini split up here on the top right. This is a home that I sold in Cambridge, 27 Madison Ave. It also had some high performance windows. These are triple pane European tilt turn windows as well. So this home was built to like the 50th shade of green, this passive house certification, which is now part of the Massachusetts building code, new construction building code as well. But this guy back in 2015 was way ahead of the game building to these high performance standards. Again, just another great asset from Cape Ann Climate Coalition. They have these heat pump coaches, volunteer coaches that are there to help you figure out the best kind of mini split that you want to use, help you understand the technology behind these. These are volunteer coaches. It doesn't cost you a thing, and they're trained to help you to understand this new technology. Just another great asset from Cape Ann Climate Coalition. Great work being done. You just have such a great opportunity here to connect with these folks. And this, not only were the costs out of my pocket for putting in the mini splits that we're using for our heating and cooling load here, much more cost effective. Like I said, my builder, when I asked John, what's it going to cost if I put in a new natural gas system, I buy a separate AC system, I put in the ductwork for this 1895 Victorian, he said probably $45,000. I said, well, what about this new technology? Air source heat pumps, ductless mini splits, right? One technology that does the heating and the cooling. Can you see the cost efficiency there? Rather than buying a heating plant and a cooling plant, I'm buying one technology that can do both. And it worked great for me all winter long. And on top of that, Mass Save gave me a $10,000 check for switching, decarbonizing my home. So the cost out of pocket was more like $14,000 rather than $45,000. So yeah, was I willing to spend $7,000 more for a better insulation package so that I could trust the mini splits even when it gets cold? Absolutely, I was. The cost savings out of pocket were fantastic. And again, these incentives, they almost sound too good to be true. And I think that actually scares people away from them. But another reason to contact Lisa at Cape Ann Climate Coalition, because she can help guide you through all of these incentive programs that are out there. And again, our next presentation on August 16th is going to be doing a deep dive on these incentive programs. And here you see it right here. I'm sure Brianna will follow up with you. But this is where we're going to do a very, very, very deep dive on all of the incentives. And they're complicated. They're coming from all kinds of sources: the federal government with the Inflation Reduction Act, Mass Save, the utilities, National Grid up in Gloucester just has some great opportunities up there. You know, how do you access all of these tools, right? And the money is real. It's believe me, it's real money that our state and our federal government is giving us to help us do the right thing, be better neighbors, be better landlords, lower the operating costs for the homes that we own, for the buildings that we own, and reduce operating costs for everybody involved. And it's also, as you're going to find out on August 16th, an incredible tax write-off as well, right? So, you know, like I said, Brianna and I are realtors. We have a tax appetite. You know, when we get a check from the commission, it comes to us as independent contractors, a lot like you landlords, right? You get checks from your all your tenants on a monthly basis, and then you have to pay taxes on them at the end of the year. So the tax incentives that are out there, you know, just an example of one is solar PV. If I put a $20,000 system on my home, solar panels on my home, I get to take 30% of that off from what I owe the federal government the next year. $6,000. That's a pretty compelling investment tax credit. And the IRS is helping you improve your home. They're investing in your home to lower the demand on the other side of the utility meter. I mean, all the stuff that we can do on our side of the meter, there's just such great opportunity there. And here's just a highlight of this, the Inflation Reduction Act. We're certainly going to do a deep dive on August 16th, so you can understand all the incentives that are available for you out there. Again, just a reminder, don't go automatically putting solar panels on your rooftop. Reduce before you produce. Take advantage of all the energy efficiency pieces that are out there so that you can do this right. You can get it right the first time through. Here's just another, this is on the Cape Ann Climate Coalition website as well. Just an example of some of the services for landlords and tenants that they do. Again, contact Lisa J. Smith 3000 at gmail.com so that you and your tenants can take advantage of Lisa's expertise and Susan's expertise in improving your building. Just great opportunities there. So with that, Susan, Lisa, Brianna, if there are questions or if we just want to open up mics, I'm fine with that too. And we can have a little chat about all of this stuff that we've been talking about. Don't all speak at once. I'm just looking through the chat. Can you please address what you do for backup in case of an electrical outage? That's a great question, Amanda Nash. Thank you for asking that. So when you put solar panels on your rooftop, I think one of the myths that's out there, right, is when utilities go down, the solar panels are still going to work. That's not the case. So you need a separate solution for that so that the solar panels still work with the utility outage. The reason for that is, believe it or not, particularly this time of year, solar panels produce more energy than the home uses. So it goes back to the grid. And for most homeowners in the state, they use the grid as the battery storage system. And there's something called a net meter on the home. So your utility meter spins in one direction constantly, measures the number of kilowatt hours that you use on a monthly basis. You get this bill that nobody understands, and it keeps on going up, and you just pay it, and hopefully they don't cut off the utilities. When you've got solar PV on your home, you've got a different kind of meter called a net meter. And that meter, quote unquote, spins backwards. So when it's producing more energy than it's using, it spins backwards. It's recorded on that net meter. And on the winter months, when you're not producing as much energy, you get credits on your utility bill for the excess power that you produced. But that's also the reason why when the grid goes down, it automatically shuts off that net meter, because there's going to be some poor line worker out there working on a pole trying to get the electricity flowing in the neighborhood. And I'm sure none of us would want to be responsible for electrifying that guy because we're sending power back to the grid. So Amanda, the solution with this is something that is getting a lot of play right now in Massachusetts and in other communities like Vermont, for instance, a really good example of that you need some kind of battery storage system. So the most known example of that is the Tesla Powerwall. So a battery storage system that can take that excess energy, store it in a battery, not send it back to the grid, so that you can use that when the power goes down. And those costs we anticipate, like the solar PV cost, the solar panels, solar photovoltaic costs, have dropped down exponentially over the last decade. We're starting to see battery storage costs come down as well. There's also a great mass CEC incentive for battery storage systems and an investment tax credit as well. So that's the opportunities. And as Susan said, battery storage is your best bet, which is exactly right. What else do we have in here? 50% of the battery just got a small fridge. Yeah, I mean, you have to think about your load. Absolutely, Amanda. I'll say this too. There's another option in here too. This is my dream, right? So we own this home up in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. We'll put solar PV on that home. It's a passive solar designed home, so it's a pretty efficient home, built in '86. But my fantasy, Amanda, is to buy a Ford F-150 Lightning. Because believe it or not, that has the battery in that truck has the equivalent of 5 Tesla Powerwalls in it. So that truck, you can buy a cable that runs in both directions for the truck. It's an extra $1,800 expense. But the truck can be used as your battery storage to heat and cool your home, run all your appliances when the electricity goes out, which does happen in Jaffrey, New Hampshire, not so much here in Melrose, Massachusetts. So just even the relationship between the vehicles that we drive and the homes that we own, that's changing before our very eyes as well. Great questions and answers right now.
Craig, can I hop in?
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. Yeah,
Amanda,
hop in and just talk if you want.
Amanda, soon our electric vehicles will have vehicle to grid and grid to vehicle storage. And right now, some of the vehicles do, like the Ford that Craig just mentioned, but more and more that'll become available in many electric vehicles. And that's a great option for when the power goes down. So if you're going to buy an EV, check to see if it's if you can put vehicle to grid or grid to vehicle. I don't know what they're called, machines or whatever they are.
Yeah, it will help. Stacey's got it in the notes, Susan. Bidirectional charging. That's exactly what we
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. I'm sitting at the charging station right now. Maybe I'll find out if my car can do it. Thank you.
Well, yeah, that's what we're planning to do instead of a power wall, which can be quite expensive. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the Ford F-150 is not cheap, but when you look at the cost of the Powerwall, Susan, you're right. I mean, if I got 5 of those, it is the cost of the Ford F-150 Lightning truck, and I'm kind of crazy, but I'm really kind of excited about that truck, and so I've just got to get my wife to give me the thumbs up that I can buy it, Susan, is what it comes down to. Working on that one step at a time.
That's right. That's what you have to do. These are all expensive moves.
Any other questions out there? Well, we sure do hope.
I actually have one real quick. So, I mean, if you're thinking about order of doing things, which order would you do the various projects in? I mean, after let's say you've tightened up as much as you can, what would you do like after that?
Air sealing and insulation first, as you just said. There's no question that gives you the biggest return on investment, right?
Yeah.
And but I see so many homeowners, Stacy, this is a great question, right? Invest in high performance windows and they haven't invested in insulation. That's a waste of money.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we can do thermal imaging cameras. I have a great picture of this that I use when I'm teaching realtors about this stuff, of these townhouses in Brooklyn, New York. And one of them is Passive House certified. And it's a thermal imaging shot of all of these townhouses side by side. And it's very clear which one's Passive House certified because it's blue. It's not leaking any heat on this whole day. And right next to it is a townhouse that has all this red coming out of the walls, which is the indication of heat escaping the home, and these better performing windows that are blue, right? So it's a complete waste to invest in these high performing windows before you have decent air sealing and insulation, right? So that's number one. But we all know that, with windows, that's a real selling point. New windows are obviously a big selling point in the real estate market. So the reduce before the produce is really important. And then tackle those appliances one at a time. And again, the air sealing and insulation stuff is so important because you want an HVAC installer that's right sizing the system, and they've got to calculate what the heat load is. And part of that calculation is how well insulated and air sealed the building is. So always start with that. It reduces costs for everything down the line, all the way down the line, right? That's what's super important. And then, last, put solar on your home when you've got all that stuff taken care of. The heat pump technology, though, is phenomenal. And I, because I do a lot of work with green builders in and around Greater Boston. It's part of my business is selling high performance homes that are built to the 45th to 50th shade of green, right? And what I've learned from being, I'm a lead green associate and been involved with several LEED certified projects, and from the ground up. And what I've learned in that process is how important the building envelope is to do, which is why I chose closed cell spray foam when we were going down to the studs. I was going to pay more, but I know that I can count on the building envelope, even in a tough 1895 Victorian with the hip roofs all over the place and a turret, that I could really count on that superior insulation to be there for the heat pump. So that's the most important thing, is really tackle the air sealing and insulation first. Everything else can work off that.
Stacy, can I hop in here? I think a lot of it depends on what your budget is and how you can budget all these improvements over time. The IRA Act goes for 10 years. And so if you budget your what you can afford now, what you're going to save for, and then take the tax deductions year by year by year, that's going to help a lot. For example, if you don't have you don't want to go right into heat pumps because they're, that's a hunk of money. I think that hot water heaters are very cost effective. The heat pump water heaters that Greg mentioned.
We're in that situation where, like, when we bought our house, it had nothing. We had to buy everything except for a dishwasher and a microwave. So all our appliances are like 13 years old. And then we have like a high efficiency boiler combo tankless hot water heater thingy that's like maybe 10 years old, but so we're planning for end of life. But right now I'm debating, I'm like, do I do solar first or do I do heat pumps first? Because we need to get the roof replaced. Well, regardless. So it's
yeah, I mean, for me, there's no question. I would do the heat pumps first, which we've done here. I haven't had solar to this home because I want to see a year's worth of electricity bills so that I can right size the solar PV systems.
Is there a calculation tool that you're aware of where I can look at my energy usage now with the gas heat that we have and extrapolate what it would cost to heat our home with heat pumps? Yeah, or is it not that reliable?
Well, I mean, it all depends on building envelope too, right? I mean, that's a big part of the factor. So HVAC installers, one of the tricks here is make sure you have an HVAC installer that's using something called the manual JAG. That's the load calculation. And you'll hear HVAC installers say, oh, that's not important. It's too much effort. We're just going to throw in some heat pumps. That is the wrong answer to that question.
Okay.
You want a real load calculation for your work. And I think what Susan said too, really great point. Before President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, the 30% investment tax credit that was there for solar PV, for instance, had dropped down to 26%. This next year, it would have dropped down to 22%, and then it would have dropped down to 0. It's back up at 30% now, and as Susan said, all the way through 2032. So taking these improvements one step at a time and being able to lower your tax appetite year after year after year is a really smart strategy to take advantage of the tax incentives the best way that you can.
Thank you.
I'd also like to point out that the cost of your electricity plays a big role here. You're paying an awful lot of per kilowatt hour for your electricity. I would definitely go for solar, but yeah, we have municipal aggregation.
We do. So we're sitting pretty through December 2024. I'm only paying 13.7 cents per kilowatt hour for like 100% New England RECs.
Wow.
It's like 11.3 cents per kilowatt hour for the standard, which is like 15% RECs beyond the minimum. So, renewables required by law. So Salem's doing pretty well. So the payback on solar panels just doesn't look that good right now. But again, I'm like,
the same thing.
I need a new roof, but do I want to throw solar panels on it like right away to make it last longer? Or do I want to get heat pumps first and get, because I can always add more solar panels later too, if I need to, as I electrify.
Well, yeah, it depends on which solar company that you go with. For instance, I know that SunPower does have the ability to add solar panels as they go. Not every solar producer has that ability to be able to do that. So you've got to be a little bit careful with that. But there's no question that the heat pumps will increase your electric load. Now, in Melrose, we also have a great community aggregation setup too. I'm paying 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and I'm doing community solar, which drops that cost a little bit because they're stackable, right? So I'm at 100% green at a really great rate when the prices for National Grid spiked up to 40 cents per kilowatt hour, because of the geopolitical situation with Russia invading Ukraine. The other part of this too, I think that's really important, is that there's, not only do we kind of help ourselves with the volatility of the marketplace, but energy security is really important in this kind of geopolitical world in which, we as homeowners, we don't have control over this stuff, but we really can take control over the work on our side of the utility meter if we think thoughtfully about all of these improvements. That was a great question. Comments? Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
No, I'm just asking if there are any more questions.
Oh, gotcha.
Linda, maybe you want to talk a little bit, you want to talk a little bit about your job, because you do a lot in Gloucester for Mass Save and all that stuff.
Oh, you're on mute, Linda.
Okay, she doesn't want to talk. It's okay. It's okay.
That's the first time Linda Stout hasn't wanted to talk that I've known of.
That's not nice. All right. I think we're done. Anybody? No, I don't think. I think we're all done.
Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. And you can see that August 16th, we're going to do a deep dive on all of these tax incentives at the federal, state, and utility level that almost sound too good to be true, but they're there. Cape Ann Climate Coalition can guide you through this process. They have so many great resources. They know so much. And obviously all of these things you want to run before your accountant as well, because none of us are tax advisors here on this call. But there are just some great programs out there for you to be able to take advantage of. So hopefully we'll see you on August 16th. I know Brianna and Lisa will send you out an email invite if you are on this, and we'll see you on Zoom on August 16th. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Oh, wait a minute. Anyway.